Okay. Good day. I am Mrs. Adeoye, PM. Um, I'm going to teach us topic in biology, topic in class 4. And the topic is functioning ecosystem. Functioning ecosystem. First, let me ask, what is ecosystem? What is ecosystem? Then we are going to look into that. Then when you say something, some things are functioning together, what do you mean? Okay. First, let's go to the definition of ecosystem. Ecosystem is a stable, self-sustaining environment which is produced by interaction between biotic and abiotic components in an environment. Okay? Talking about biotic and abiotic. Biotic means living, abiotic means non-living. So, please, these words are very important when you are defining ecosystem. Stable, self-sustaining environment. That self-sustaining is very important, okay? And how is that produced? By the interaction between biotic, that is the living, and abiotic components, okay, in such environments. Let me quickly give you this instance. We are living organisms as animals. Without oxygen, if I ask you now, I know you will answer me, how long can we be sustained without water? Okay, look at these two I have mentioned. Water, okay, oxygen, they are very crucial to life, but they are non-living things. They are non-living, but they have interaction. They have ways in which they can affect living organisms, okay? So the living part of the environment interact with the non-living part, and there is an exchange of materials between them. Another example is this. A fish absorbs oxygen that is dissolved in water through its gills, and we give out CO2 into the water. So these gases, oxygen and CO2, they dissolve in water. They dissolve in water, and the oxygen will take up the oxygen, the gill, the fish will take up the oxygen, and along the line, it releases the CO2. Okay, this interaction results in the ecosystem being a functional unit. Okay, imagine in a school now, we are functioning. You see, we have the head of school, okay, we have the head of departments, we now have teachers, we have students, we have different departments. Each of these departments, they have who they will report to, and so that makes them to function. Likewise in biology, in environment, we function when living and non-living part of the environment, when they are reacting, when they are exchanging materials, okay? So that's what we mean by functioning ecosystem. That's what we mean by functioning ecosystem. So with that, we've been able to talk about functioning ecosystem. When you talk about ecosystem, it talks about how living and non-living components, how in an environment, how they relate together, and I have given us different examples. And that they are relating together, that their exchange of material make them to function, hence the topic functioning ecosystem. Okay, look at this a diagram, schematic representation of components of an ecosystem. Okay, in ecosystem, we have two main components. Please follow. This will explain it better. In an ecosystem, we have two main components, that is abiotic factors. We have abiotic factors or components, and we also have biotic. Remember that abiotic has to do with non-living, okay, like water, temperature, rainfall, wind. They are non-living, but they have effect on living organisms. Now, also in an ecosystem, we have biotic factors, which are divided into three groups. All living things in your environment can be divided into three. We have producers, we have consumers, we have decomposers. Okay, I'm talking generally about ecosystem, components of an ecosystem. Okay, now we have non-living components. I have talked about that and I have given examples like temperature, rainfall, sunlight, and others. Then we have biotic components. We have biotic, which are producers, consumers, and decomposers. Okay, when we have just put everything into this, what do we mean? All plants, all green plants, we fall under producers. You remember, we have two main types of nutrition: autotrophic nutrition and heterotrophic nutrition. So organisms that feed by autotrophic nutrition, they are producers. Okay, these producers, mainly they are green plants. We call them producers because they manufacture their food by themselves. They have the ability to manufacture their food by themselves through the process known as photosynthesis. That is a topic on its own. We are not going there. So after they have produced their food by photosynthesis, then some organisms will feed on them. They are consumers. These organisms that we feed on them can feed on them directly, or they feed on them indirectly. Those that we feed directly on them, they are called primary consumers. Hence, you can see we have primary consumers, secondary consumers, and tertiary consumers. I'm still explaining biotic factors or components of an ecosystem. Everything we are going to talk about is being represented by this diagram. Okay, so I have spoken about producers, which are mainly plants, green plants that have chlorophyll, that have ability to photosynthesize. When they photosynthesize, they produce their own food that they use. Okay, then this will be passed to the consumers. And consumers can be grouped into three. We have primary consumers, secondary consumers, and tertiary consumers. Primary consumers are the consumers that feed directly on producers. They are herbivores, organisms that can feed on plants. Okay, you have grasshopper, you have rabbits, goats, and many other examples. They are primary consumers. Okay, they can feed directly on producers. Then you have secondary consumers. Okay, then we have secondary consumers. These are primary carnivores. They are carnivores. They can feed on flesh. They can now feed on animals that have already eaten producers. Do you get it now? That's why I'm saying they may not feed directly. Consumers may feed directly or indirectly on the producers. Fine, we have talked about primary consumer that feed directly. They are herbivores, but we have carnivores. Okay, we say they are feeding indirectly on the plants because the organism that the flesh they are eating must have eating producers before. Example, you have toad. Toad can feed on insects that are fed upon plants. Do you get it now? A lizard also can fall there. We have many other examples of secondary consumers. I'm still on consumers. I'm not on decomposers yet. All I'm saying now is on consumer. And this will be useful for you when we get to food chain, if you are able to understand this diagram, okay? They are also living. They are in the environment. And as organisms exist in the environment, they relate. Part of relating is exchanging material and even feeding on each other. So that is why we cannot take feeding out of our functioning ecosystem. Okay? So after the secondary consumer, we now have tertiary consumers. These can be secondary carnivores or omnivores. You know, we have omnivores too. Omni, when something is omni, okay, it is not on one, we cannot only feed on one, can feed on more than one. Like we have two kind of food now. Look at any kind of food that we eat. Mention any food that you eat. They are either from plants or animal. The food we eat, they are either from plant or animal. So we are good example. Human beings are good examples of tertiary consumers, omnivores, okay? So I'm done with the consumers. Still talking about the biotic factor. You can feel it. I've talked about the producers, the consumers, which can be grouped into three based on what they eat. Then we now have the decomposers. Decomposers are also living. What is their role in the environment? When producers and consumers die, you know, part of characteristics of living things is that living things die. When both producers and consumers die, it is the decomposer that will not allow their dead body to be piled up. They will make them decay, okay? Though in that way they may pollute the environment, but they are still helping us in the environment by breaking them down. The materials that have made them up, they are trying to break them down, and they release certain materials when they are doing that, which can give more nutrients that the plant will be able to absorb, which will go in another way to animal when the animals feed on the plant. So the decomposers break down dead plants and animals to release nutrients to the soil. That is the work of decomposers. Now, to talk about decomposers, we have them in two groups. We have micro decomposers and we have macro decomposers. Micro, you know, in biology, when you mention something micro, something small, something minute, and some of them you cannot even see them with your naked eye. You need to see them with the aid of microscope, okay? So we have bacteria as a good example of micro. Then you have, you know, you have termites and others. Termites are big enough for you to see. They are also decomposers. Fungi, they are examples of decomposers. So these are the components of an ecosystem. So I believe this diagram has been able to explain better for you the component of ecosystem. Let me go over it just in 1 minute. In ecosystem has two main components, abiotic and biotic. Abiotic are non-living, any non-living thing that you can find in the environment, but that have effect on living organisms. I gave example like sunlight, cause plants need them for photosynthesis, okay? Temperature, rainfall, humidity, oxygen, water, those are abiotic factors. Then under biotic factors, we have them grouped into three: producers, consumers, and decomposers. Okay? Now, I have talked briefly on this. Let's still go more into it. Autotrophs and heterotrophs. There are also terms that you need to take notes when you are doing this topic. What are heterotrophs? What are autotrophs? Let me start from auto. Auto, from the word auto. Auto, okay? Auto, it happens without much stress. It happens like that. And what are the organisms that take part in such, or that are called autotrophs? They are green plants. And as I have said in the previous slide, they are producers. Why are they autotrophs? Because they can make their own food from carbon dioxide. Okay, they just make use of the CO2, water, sunlight captured by chlorophyll. They don't need to go to kitchen to cook their food. Look at the plants around you. That is where they have been, and they are growing. Unlike you just stay somewhere for 10 days. Let's see what will happen. Don't go to kitchen, don't go anywhere, because our nature is different from theirs. That is why we call them autotrophs. Automatically, even where they are, their food is being manufactured and they are growing. So all what plants need is to be situated where it will get source of light, sunlight, because it has pigment in it. Chlorophyll, all of these are mentioned here. Chlorophyll, that is the pigment that the plant need to absorb the energy from the sunlight. Then, when organisms respire, organisms give out CO2. So the plant absorb this CO2. We have structures in the leaf that they use to absorb it. Stoma, for exchange of materials. You have stoma is singular, stomata when you are referring to more of it. Okay, there are openings, little openings that you cannot just see with your naked eye, but they are present in the leaves. Okay, so through that, CO2 in the environment will be absorbed by the plants. Okay, and when it rains, for sometimes you will see water all over the soil, the ground, but after a while you will not see the water. What has happened to the water? Some of the water has been evaporated, okay, but some has been absorbed by the soil. So the water that is being absorbed by the soil, there's a process known as osmosis. So through this process, there are hair-like structures in the roots of the plant. The root of the plant is embedded in the soil. Okay, so through this hair-like structure, the water, together with the mineral salts dissolved in them, will be absorbed into the plant. So all materials needed for the plant to manufacture their food are automatically present there. The water will be absorbed by the root, the CO2 will be absorbed, the chlorophyll is already present. That is what makes the plant to be green, the leaves to be green, and also the sunlight is already there up. All that is needed is for chlorophyll to absorb the sunlight. Okay, so we call plants autotrophs. The means of the nutrition is known as autotrophic nutrition. But we are not really going into nutrition now. We are going into how organisms relate in the environment. So, grouping of organisms, grouping of biotic organisms in the ecosystem can still follow this: autotrophs and heterotrophs. And I have explained what autotrophs are. Autotrophs can also be called green plants. Autotrophs can also be called producers. And why do we call them that? Because they can manufacture their food through the process of photosynthesis, making use of carbon dioxide, water, sunlight, and the chlorophyll present in them. Hence, they are called autotrophs. Okay? You can also call plants primary producers. Why? This is because they support all other organisms in the ecosystem. Okay, so Now, why do we call plants primary producers? They support all other organisms. How do they support all other organisms? If you remember from the charts, from this I gave to you, producers are here. They will be fed upon by the consumers. The consumers will feed on them. Imagine if they refuse to manufacture the food. Where will primary consumers get their food? Do you get it now? Primary consumers will eat. If they don't get food from the plant, what will the secondary consumer eat? So the basis, the primary production of the food we eat. If you eat chicken, chicken is an animal, but chicken can feed on plants like corn, like guinea corn, all of that. So you can see that directly or indirectly, all organisms depend on plants. And at the same time, when they use all those materials, like I have said, to manufacture their food, the result will be production of glucose and oxygen as a byproduct. And you know how important oxygen is to us, okay? Without oxygen, please, how long can you live? Oxygen is essential, and how it is produced is through photosynthesis in plant. How it is maintained, fine, it is normally present in the atmosphere, but it is maintained because there are activities that we do. That is in another topic. That is activities that we do that can take up this oxygen. But when there are plants around us, they will release oxygen, more oxygen into the environment, so that the level of the oxygen will be balanced and everything will be okay. We will have enough oxygen to use. So you can see that these plants, autotrophs, they are very essential to life. Okay, another group of autotrophs are chemosynthetic bacteria. So you can say that two types of autotrophic nutrition that we have, they are photosynthesis and chemosynthesis. Green plants carry out photosynthesis, while bacteria carry out chemosynthesis. And what do these bacteria do? They use chemical energy, hence the word chemo. Okay, they use chemical energy instead of light energy. Light, photo in biology means light. Okay, the plant make use of sun as the source of energy, while the bacteria make use of chemical as their source of energy to manufacture their food. So there are two main groups of autotrophs, like I have said. We have photosynthetic green plants and chemosynthetic bacteria. Chemosynthetic bacteria. That is about autotrophs. You know, I've said biotic organisms can still be grouped into autotrophs and heterotrophs. So I have spoken about autotrophs. I believe you understand. Okay. Heterotrophs now, they are animals. Can you realize something? Okay, if I should ask you now, what makes the difference between autotrophs and heterotrophs? Yes, I know what you will tell me is that autotrophs are mainly green plants, okay? Why heterotrophs are animals. And these animals, they are consumers, okay? They do not manufacture their food themselves, but they depend directly or indirectly on the producers, like I have said. So they are called heterotrophs. We have primary consumers, like we have seen in the chart above. We have, and the primary consumers are known as herbivores. We have secondary consumers, okay, carnivores, and at times we have tertiary consumers. They are also carnivores, and at times they could be omnivores. Okay? Now, in aquatic habitats, the phytoplankton are consumed. This is example, please. I want to give you example on both aquatic and terrestrial habitats, okay? In aquatic habitats, we have organisms called phytoplankton. Those are microscopic plants, okay? So they are consumed by zooplankton. These are microscopic animals. Then there will be higher animals in the water that will feed on them. Small animals such as small crustacean, barnacles, and clams, okay, will feed upon phytoplankton, okay? They are all primary consumers, but later they will all be taken by other larger consumers, such as fish. That is how it goes. From here, you should be able to form food chain. Soon in this topic, you will realize what we call food chain. What is food chain? It talks about how energy moves from the first organism, and normally in a food chain, the first organism is usually a plant because it is the primary producer. So like here in water, you have phytoplankton. They are the basic. I've given you example. You may not just write phytoplankton, you may write diatom. Diatom is an example of phytoplankton, okay? They are microscopic plants in aquatic habitats. Then they have to be fed upon by primary consumers. And examples of primary consumers are zooplankton, which are also microscopic animals. Then we have more small crustaceans, barnacles, and clams. That is not the end. These organisms also have some bigger organisms that will feed on them. That is how it continues. They have higher organisms which are carnivores that will feed on them because they can feed on flesh, okay, like bigger fish, and that makes the environment to be functioning. They are relating, okay, though it's by feeding. Now, in terrestrial habitats, we have two main habitats. So I'm trying to explain this, both how it happens in water and on land. First, I've spoken about in water, and now on land, in terrestrial habitats. There are terrestrial plants. Mention any type of plants, okay? If you want to write a food chain, you can give a specific of a green plant, name of a green plant, and you can write just green plants. Make sure green is there. Don't just put plants. Green plants, okay? So animals that now feed on these plants, they are grasshoppers, beetles, and there are more. I've told you rabbits too can be eaten. They feed directly on the plants. The plants are primary producers. These grasshoppers, they will serve as primary consumer. Then you now have secondary consumers that will feed on grasshoppers, beetles, and others. So then there will now be grazing mammals, okay, which will be eaten by other consumers. So this has explained to us how plants and animals relate together and with their non-living components, okay? There are more to do in this topic, but for now, I have explained decomposers already. For now, let me give you assignments, okay? To write food chain, examples of food chain, one example of food chain in aquatic habitat and terrestrial habitats. Okay? Good day.